How's it going? It's Jay from Sony Alpha Lab, and what I got for you in this highly detailed review slash tutorial is the DJI Ronin SC2. Now I'm going to show you how to set this thing up using the Sony A7C. Now I don't have the Pro kit, I just got the regular kit. So this unit goes for $500 as you're seeing here. The Pro kit comes with the focus motor, the Raven Eye, and a carrying case and a few other things. Let's just get right into it, guys. I'm gonna show you how to set this thing up, how to balance the camera, how to use it. All right, so I'm just gonna break this thing down real quick and start from the beginning. So let me just start by taking the slider off here. Take this cable out. All right, guys, so you got it out of the box, and this is what it looks like when you take it out of the box. It folds up into this nice compact size. And if you've never used a gimbal before, this can definitely be a little bit intimidating as to how to go about setting it up and things like that. But don't you worry about it. We're going to go over it in detail. And if you follow along, you will have this thing all set up and configured, and you will know how to use it by the end of this video. I just wanted to go over quickly the gimbal itself. Now, looking at it, like I said, this is what it looks like in the compact position as it comes out of the box. Now, it is a foldable design, so there's like a hinge right here, like the handle goes up and hinges. So in order to initiate that, there's a lock lever right here. So you just have to unscrew that to unlock it, like so. And then you can torque this thing up. Now, it is still hard. Like, you got to put a lot of effort into bending this up. Just so you know, it's like a tight hinge here. So just bring it up all the way down into place, and now it's in position. And then relock the knob. Make sure you lock this again. Get it locked there and there. Now the gimbal is kind of in the position you would expect it to see normally when they don't bend in half like this, like this one does. So that is pretty much the default position. Now in the box, you also have this. This is the lower little tabletop tripod. I'm going to throw that on there so I can rest the gimbal down comfortably. Just screws into the bottom of the handle. There's a thread right there. And then we got the 1/4 inch thread on the top of that. Just going to screw that in. Wow, this is working out pretty good. I got my camera on the table, and it seems to be working out better than I expected, to be honest with you. All right, so that's what it looks like. Let me just put this to the side for a second because I want to go over a couple other things quick. I'm going to be using the Sony A7C, and I have the 20mm f1.8G lens mounted to the camera. So that is what I'm going to use to balance on this, because I think this is the optimal vlogging setup for my purposes, which is what I want to use this for in particular. So I'm obviously going to use other lenses as well, but I wanted to configure it with this lens first to try it out. So that's what I'm going to do, and that's what you can expect to see if you have the same setup. You're just going to basically follow along exactly. But if you're using a different lens, don't worry about it. This process is exactly the same. The only difference is on the front. I'll show you this again. This is basically a lens support. So if the screws on the front of the bracket here, this little slide bracket, you could see in the front how it has some thread holes, and it goes in like this. And it'll basically just help support a longer telephoto lens. I don't need to use it though at the 20mm because the lens is so short, so I'm not going to need it. But it does, like I said, screw on the front of this plate, and you basically adjust the height so it marries up to the bottom of the lens. And there's also a strap that you can use to strap around the lens, which will basically make it one locked unit to this thing. And in that mode, you could use super smooth. When you use super smooth, they really want you to lock the lens down. But like I said, with a lens like this that's so short, it doesn't come into play. So you're not going to have to worry about it if using this lens. Now, like I already mentioned here, you have this bracket, which actually slides into the top of the gimbal. Now, what also is provided are these two step-ups, I guess you could call it, but they're camera mounts. One's fat and one's thin. So you're going to use the fatter one if you're using a really fat lens like the 12-24, for example, or a Batis lens, a lens that really balloons out. You're going to need to have it higher off the mount plate on the gimbal. Like, it's going to have to be higher off, or else it will end up hitting this plate here. So this plate is ultimately going to mount to the bottom of the camera like so. And you can imagine if you're using a fat lens, it's going to hit right here. So you would need to move this plate further away. And that's what this larger mount is for, to just move the camera further away, the camera and the lens. But like I said, I don't need that. I need the smaller one. So I'm going to use this guy. Now, in here is the little bag that comes with the accessories, and it has that Velcro strap that I was just talking about if you need to wrap it around the lens and stuff. But it also has this little screw here, this black screw, and that's to mount this on the front of the bracket. Not going to need that. What we are going to need is one of the D threaded screws, and I actually already have it in the mount here. So you can see the D thread. It's just a screw, and the D is that thing on the top that allows you to tighten it. So you just got to thread that in to the hole here, like so, and then it basically looks like an Arca Swiss tripod mount plate. So at that point, all you got to do is screw it on the bottom of the camera here. Now I'm taking this step by step, guys, okay? So you can skip ahead if I'm going too slow. If some of this stuff seems like ridiculously obvious, just skip ahead. You know, I like to do my tutorials for beginner-based users, so I am going a little bit above and beyond from a beginner perspective. If you've never done this before, I want to cover all those little things that you might not think of, and you might already be familiar if you've done stuff like this. But if you never have, this video is really optimized for people like that, because I really like to break it down in a lot of detail. All right, so now I have the plate on the bottom of the camera on the A7C, you can see there. And at that point, I can slide this plate on if I want, or I could put this plate onto the gimbal itself and then slide this in once it's on the gimbal. But I just wanted to show you while it's off the camera how this works. And it's just got a slide there. You can see the grooves. So I'm going to slide this in like so. So you can see how that slid in. See how this slides like this? And then it has a lock button here. There's a button here. If you want to take it off, you got to press that button. And now see how it won't fall off by accident because it has that lock lever. So just slide this in, and then there's a handle here. You're going to tighten that handle. That will lock you on. So now this bracket is locked like so. And as you can see, I have space under here, under the lens, so it's not a problem. Otherwise, I would need to use that higher stepped bracket. And once again, if the lens was longer, I could mount the lens support bracket like I showed you before, right on the front here using the screw and support the lens. I'm going to skip that though for this tutorial because don't really need it with this lens in my opinion. One other thing I wanted to mention is the manual is actually really good. It comes in the box and it shows you how to do all this stuff step by step. I was pretty impressed with that. I have the online manual loaded up on my iPad though here, so I can use it for reference if needed. The other thing we're going to need is the cable. So I'm using the USB-C to USB-C cable. That's what's required for the Sony a7C and the Ronin SC2. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to unlock the pan here, spin this around, and I'm going to lock that back in place like so. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to unlock this guy, rotate it up like so, and then I'm going to unlock the top one and let that swing down, and I'm going to leave that one. Actually, I'm going to lock it again because I want to mount the camera to it. All right, so now another thing you need to keep in mind here, you have to have the camera fully configured. So you're going to want the lens cap off, the lens hood on if you want the lens hood on, otherwise take it off. Because remember, you're balancing this thing and it's a very precise unit, so you want it as exact as possible. Another thing you want to do is hook the cable up. You want the cable hooked up when you balance it. So what I'm going to do is it just slides into this little nook here, like so. So this guy is just going to sit here and slide in. And already right now I'm running into a problem. The camera is actually hitting the side of the gimbal, so it won't let me slide it in. So what I need to do is, there's a lever right here. Let me show that to you. There's a lock lever right here. So if you loosen that, you can move this plate around. So what I need to do is move that plate out a little bit. So I just need to slide this out to give the camera more room on this side. So I'm just going to slide that out to like here, lock it again, and see if it fits now. All right, there we go. Got a little bit of clearance. I'm just going to slide it out. You see how this moves here? So I'm just going to give a little bit of clearance there so there's some room on the edge of the gimbal. Lock that. And now notice how this guy also slides. So you can slide this back and forth as well. So I'm just going to lock this temporarily right there. And that is the first step. All I need to do now is plug the wire in here, and it goes into the one labeled RSS right there. So you can see that's plugged in the front. So now the camera is in there and it is mounted. Now it's not fully mounted, it's just mounted, somewhat. So the first thing we're going to want to do is adjust the camera vertically. So I'm going to unlock this top button here, this top arm, so now the camera can swing like this. And you always want to keep your hand near it just in case it's very unbalanced. You don't want it swinging down and smashing the lens on this. So just make sure when you unlock these, you have your hand on something, to support it. Just rule of thumb. Because if you have it severely unbalanced, it's going to swing quickly and you don't want to damage your camera, your screen, your lens, or whatever. So at this point, what you want is let me just adjust my camera. Hang on a sec. All right, so remember the goal of the balancing the rig is to get the center of mass balanced within the gyroscopic motors, basically. So if you look at this, I just want to explain this to you in detail so you understand the concept, because a lot of people, in my opinion, they don't understand how and why they're balancing it, exactly, so that makes it much harder to balance. But if you understand the concept of why you're balancing it, it makes a lot more sense. Now, to me anyways. So if you look at this, right now I have the camera facing vertical, and it's not going to stay like that because the center of gravity, the center of mass, is too far this way. So the camera and lens are too far this way. I need to move the entire rig that way. So it's got to get closer to the electronic motor. You want the center of mass to be centered with the motor itself. So that means this whole thing needs to slide that way. Now there's a knob on the top here. Let me turn this way and show you what I just showed you again. So looking at it this way, you could see here is the motor. Now the center of mass of the camera and lens needs to be basically centered with this motor so it doesn't swing down automatically. So what I need to do is I need to loosen this knob on the top, and I could then slide the whole rig inward. So you see how I just moved the center of mass more to the center of this motor? That's what I was talking about. So just keep sliding it in, and it's got a little bit of friction. It's kind of a little bit of pain to slide, and you got to move it quite a bit for this setup. All right, so right about there. So you can see right about there, I see how much I had to move it. I had to move it almost 1.5 inches from where it started when it came out of the box. And now the camera floats vertically. Now make sure that you tighten this knob back up, okay? We might have to fine tune it a little bit later, but that's pretty good right now. So now if we put the camera like this back in the normal position, it doesn't want to stay, see? So that means we need to make another adjustment. And that's where this slide comes in that I showed you a second ago. This plate here, it's got the lever. If you unlock that lever, remember this whole thing slides now. So now again, we need to get the center of mass in alignment with the accelerometer motor, whatever you want to call it. So this one's a little bit more finicky, but I'm just moving it back and forth here. So let me turn it sideways so you can see. I'm just sliding the camera back and forth now to get it to align. Now that's too far forward. Right about there. That's pretty good. Now let me turn this lever here. There's a lever right here. You just tighten that up, and then if you let it go, it should stay. And then you should be able to put it at an angle like that, an angle like that, and then it should stay facing vertical as well. And that's pretty darn close. All right, let me just adjust that just a little bit. All right, I just got that a little more fine-tuned. So it should technically just stay wherever, like that. That's how you want it, pretty much. Now it's falling back just a little bit, so I could fix that as well. All right, so let me loosen this guy. And this is a process. It definitely takes a little bit of getting used to. That looks pretty good. All right, we're good there. All right, so now we're looking good. Now we just need to do 2 more. We need to do this guy and this guy. So looking at the gimbal, what I'm going to do next is I am going to unlock. So this one here is unlocked. I'm going to unlock the next arm, which is this guy right here. So the lock is right here underneath. And again, like I said, make sure you hold something just in case. All right, so there we go. So this thing is drastically tilted that way, as you can see. So again, the center of mass. So you can see here, now we're calibrating to this motor. So the center of mass needs to be centered with this motor. And you can see here it's heavily weighed towards me, which is why it's falling this way. So again, looking at it from the front, there's too much weight going this way. There's too much weight on this side, which is causing it to swing this way. So if you loosen this knob on the back, you could slide this whole arm in. So you see I'm moving the entire rig this way. I'm sliding it this way to try to make it so it balances like this. So that's pretty close. All right, right about there is pretty good. All right, so the last thing we're gonna do is the pan one. So let me unlock that. It's over here. So now this one is unlocked. And if I get the camera back to balanced and I tilt the gimbal one way, see how it's swiveling? It's not supposed to swivel. So because it's swiveled that way, I need to adjust the bottom bar here. So let me slide that in a little bit. Let's see how that does. There we go. All right, it's tilting to the right now. All right, so I need to move it back a little bit. Right about there seems pretty good. All right, it's only moving a little bit. So that's pretty good, guys. I think I got this thing pretty darn balanced. I can fine tune it a little bit more, but I can pretty much get it to stay right where I need it. It's just so loosey-goosey, you know, it just wants to move a little bit. But right there, if I just leave it like that, it stays balanced. So it's pretty darn close. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna turn the gimbal on. It's gonna automatically put it in the default position. But then what we have to do after that is we need to auto tune it. And you're also gonna need to connect it to the Ronin app the first time you boot this up. So make sure you have your Ronin app downloaded so you're ready to go when it comes to that. So let me just turn this thing on quick. There's the power button here on the side. All right, so I'm just going into the Ronin app here, and I'm just gonna click on it right there. That's gonna boot up the app. And now what I'm gonna need to do is connect to the gimbal. So notice on the top there, just hit connect. GPS is disabled, unable to search for gimbal Bluetooth connection, enable GPS. All right, so I have to enable the GPS, turn that on, go back. All right, so again, the first time you click on it, you're gonna get prompted with this password. The default password is 12345678. Just enter that in there. Click OK, and then it's gonna ask you to activate. And at that point, you could then use the gimbal for the first time. I just skipped this, trying to get you to buy stuff. And there you have it. So now I am connected to the gimbal. When you first boot this up, it like demands that you attach to this app. So I recommend that you do that, obviously. Before you can use it, you kind of have to, and you need to register. But after that's completed, you could pretty much do everything else from the grip, except use some of these more advanced features. Like if you go to create, for example, these in here, you need to do that from the app. And the tracking one you can't do, you need the Raven Eye for that, which I don't have. But these other cool modes like panorama, using a game controller, and virtual joystick, time-lapse, force mobile, pretty cool features. And that's where you can go about doing that. You have your balancing test there, you have motor parameters. You can go in here and you can do an auto tune. So let's do that right now. All right, so I'm just gonna do an auto tune from the app here. And you can see it shakes the camera a little bit to figure out what the payload is and stuff. Goes through and then it'll basically give you a result. Calibration successful. So it looks like we're good there. And another thing I wanted to show you is if you just hold the trigger down here and the mode button, if you hold them both down, it'll automatically go into auto tune. See how it's auto tuning again? So you just hold the M button, the mode button, and the trigger button for like 3 seconds and it'll auto tune so you don't have to go through the menu system. And now we have a balance test here. So if I click on that, we can go into begin test. And all you have to do is basically put the camera at a little bit of an angle like that and then hit begin test. And now it's going to do its auto tune, or balancing test rather. So this is basically just to determine and make sure that the camera is in fact balanced correctly. Even though I did balance it and I did auto tune it, it passed. But now this is just verifying that it's good enough, you know, because it could still be torquing the motors too much. And it looks like I got an excellent for pan, roll, and tilt. So we're good to go at this point, guys. We are ready to use this gimbal. So let me show you how to use the gimbal, and I'll show you how the joystick works and stuff, and I'll also show you a couple different configurations that you can use the gimbal in. All right, so when you first take it out of the box, it does have approximately 25% battery life, and you can see up on the top right-hand side of the screen it says 90% because I already charged mine. But what I wanted to show you quickly was right here is the charging port. It's a USB-C, and there's an included cable inside that you can hook it up to any charger that you have laying around your house or whatever. Pretty straightforward. It just powers off USB and charges up. Now here is the power button. This right here is another attachment point where you can attach an accessory like the phone holder, for example. And then let me just show you on the front here. You have the turn dial here, which you can use for focus, or you can program it to other things. And then you have your trigger here, which controls the gimbal in a variety of ways. If you double tap it, for example, it'll put it back in the default position. If you triple tap it, it will turn into selfie 180-degree mode position. I'll just tap it twice to put it back. And if I turn the gimbal this way, a little more, looking at the backside, you have the joystick here, which you can then control the camera and stuff like that. You can move it in any direction. You have the mode dial, and you have the record button, so when your camera is plugged in, you can hit the record button to start recording video, which is a very nice feature. You can also press it down halfway to focus, and it says if you hold it down, it'll take a photo, but it wasn't working for me when I tried to do that for whatever reason, so I'm still playing around with that particular function. Now over here on this side, there's a couple more buttons which you need to be aware of. You have your back button, and you have a dial here. Now this dial can turn, but you can also push it in as a button. So it not only goes up and down, it also pushes in. And then just for a closer look over here, here's that lock dial again. And I have it locked in this position right now, but you can unlock it, open it up, and swing this down to use the camera in other configurations. And here is the other lock knob that each arm has. So this knob allows the arm to move back and forth, and each arm has that, as you saw when we were balancing it. All right, so now that we got this thing powered on and you have it registered with the Ronin app, you are good to go. Now, when you're looking at the screen here, this is what it looks like at its very basic. Now on the top here next to the M1, there's a bunch of other icons that will show up depending on what you're using. All right, so currently we're in mode 1 because it says M1 at the top. But if you hit this M button, it'll cycle through the different modes. Now we're on mode 2, and notice how that's set to PTF as opposed to just PF. And M3 is set to FPV. So these are the default settings, and you can configure each of these modes as I'll show you right now. So I'm in mode 1, but if you just press this dial over here on the left-hand side in, that'll bring you into the menu system. And then at that point, you can scroll by rotating the dial into the different features. Now follow is the one that I wanted to show you because that will change your different follow mode. So if you just press in on the button, that'll get you into the mode area, and then you can again scroll to the different options. And in this case, there's only the two. So if I push in on the mode, now I can change it to the different modes as you see here. That's how you do it. So I'm just going to leave it on pan follow for now, and I'll just hit the back button here to go back, and there you have it. So now if I scroll through, I wanted to show you, here's the auto tune option. You can go in there. This is the joystick, so you can configure the joystick how you want it to work. Front dial, you can change what the front dial is. Now I have it set to aperture right now, and let me see if it works. Yeah, it's changing the aperture on the camera. That's pretty darn cool. So by default, that was set to focus. So I just went in there and changed it to aperture because I'm not changing the focus. And if you click, you can see the different options that are in there. And if we go into the advanced area, I wanted to show you something else. Silent mode, you can turn that off so you don't hear the thing boot up. Orbit follow, that's just another cool feature. Disable selfie, so that mode, if you triple tap the trigger, the camera will automatically go into selfie mode. So you can disable that in here if you don't use that feature and you're accidentally pressing it, for example. Horizontal calibration, gimbal auto check, push mode. Now if you go into push mode here, I recommend going in here and turning this stuff on. This will allow you to force the camera. If you want to move the camera in a certain direction and you don't want to hurt the motors, you have to put it push mode on. And this is a good feature for when you use some of the more advanced like waypoints and stuff. You're going to want to have it set to on in there. So I recommend putting it there just so you don't do any damage to the motors. There's a couple more: focus motor endpoint, and then other. If we go into other, you can restore language, device info, firmware update, things like that. That's all in there. So let me show you how this gimbal works in the various modes. And I just wanted to go over some of the basics for you first. So like I said, if I hit record, the camera is now recording. I'll show you. See, the camera's recording now. I hit the record button. So now what I can do is I'm going to triple click the trigger here, and the camera is going to swivel around into selfie mode. So now you can see the camera is in selfie mode. It's aiming at me now because I just triple tapped the trigger. And again, like I said, you can turn that feature off if you want, and you just double tap the trigger and it'll go back into normal mode. And then of course you can grab the joystick here and you can just move wherever you want. And you can change the joystick speed, so you can make this much smoother and slower if you want. Right now this is all set to default. But again, like I said, I can go into the menu here and you can scroll to the joystick, click in there, and you can change the speed. See that? So if I go in there and change that to slow, like so, and go back, and then the smoothness, you can change that as well. And now if I use the joystick, the camera is turning slower. But the joystick is also like an accelerometer, so the farther you go, the faster it's going to go. So if you just hold really gently, it'll go pretty slow, as you can see here. So that's as slow as I could make it go. I'm being pretty darn careful. But like I said, and then that's as fast as it's going to go now. So that's how the joystick works. And then if I just double tap, it'll put it back to the default location like so. And I'll just hit the back button on the joystick here to get back to the main menu. All right, so let me show you how some of these modes work. All right, so right now I have it in pan follow mode. And as you can see, this is how the camera behaves. If I twist the grip, the camera's going to turn. And it's also going to stay level though. Notice how the camera's not like tilting down or anything like that. So this is in pan follow mode. Now if I hold the trigger down, it's going to lock the rotation. See that? So now the camera will still stay level, but notice how it's not turning to the right or the left. It's pretty much the camera staying facing in the same direction for the most part when it comes to as far as twisting the grip. If I turn the camera like this, it will still turn a little bit, but it is locking. So now watch what happens when I press the trigger twice. It's going to go back right back to default position right there. Let me change it into PTF mode, which stands for pan and tilt follow. I'm just going to press the mode dial to mode 2, and now it's in pan and tilt follow. So now if I play around with the camera, notice how the camera is aiming down, and now it's aiming up. So it's following more as to what in relation to the grip. So that's what pan tilt follow does, as opposed to just pan follow. Notice how it's tilting as well. Now let me put it in FPV mode. All I gotta do is press the mode dial one more time. So now it's in FPV mode, which is pan, tilt, and roll follow. So in this mode, we're getting all sorts of movement. So now it's rolling, tilting, and everything, as you can see. So depending on what you're doing, you might not want it to do this. This is kind of like too much movement for a lot of situations, but you may want it to do that. You may want it to do what it's doing here. It's basically going in the same direction as the grip in all scenarios. Now let me switch back to mode 1, which is just the pan follow. See the difference? How the camera's staying level? And when I aim it down, the camera's still staying level. This is the mode I'm probably going to use the most, but it's nice to know that you have the other modes. So again, here is the other pan tilt follow. So now it tilts as well, but notice how it's not rolling. And now if I switch it to FPV, we're going to get the roll as well, as you can see. Now it's rolling, tilting, and panning. And again, you could lock by holding the trigger. You could lock at any time and it'll stay in place no matter which mode you're in, which is a really nice feature. So for example, if you get the camera right where you want it, like right there, I'm going to lock it. Now I can get closer, further away, and because the grip is actually tilting, the camera should be tilting, but because I have the lock pressed, it's not tilting. It's locked. So that's what the lock does, and it's a really powerful tool. I highly recommend playing with that lock feature using the trigger. And I'm just double tapping to put it back where it was. I'm going to switch back to M1, which by default is the pan follow mode. Then I'm going to go into selfie mode by triple tapping, 1, 2, 3. And now she's in selfie mode. So now I can just hold this out and record some selfie footage. And it's pretty hard. It's pretty heavy. It's got a lot of weight to it, I gotta say. It's a light setup overall, but still my arm is getting pretty tired holding this thing. So just so you're aware, it does have a little bit of weight to it. All right, so if you're holding the gimbal like this and you just aim the gimbal forward like that, and you look at it from the side, this is considered flashlight mode, and you can get some really cool in and out type shots using it in this mode. You can also get up very high. You can bring her down to the ground pretty low in this mode as well. So this is what's called flashlight mode. All it is taking it from a vertical position and just pushing it out like this. And now you're in flashlight mode. So another cool mode is called underslung mode. And what you're going to want to do is just press the power button and a little moon is going to come up on the screen, and that is going to put the camera into sleep. And when it's in sleep, you can freely move this stuff around. You don't have to worry about anything getting damaged. And now if you want to put it in underslung mode, what you need to do is swing this down like so, spin that around, and hanging like that is pretty much underslung mode. So then if you put the camera back on, you can see now it is in underslung mode. So you can hang this down. You could walk like this with it, but obviously you can have it really low to the ground easily in this mode. But you can walk like that and have it low to the ground. And as you can imagine, it's going to work really good. That's underslung mode. And like I said, you have to put it in sleep mode to get it in and out of this position. So just tap the power button once. That'll put the camera in sleep mode. Then you can bring the camera back up into normal position like that. And then if you tap the button again to wake her up, it'll realign itself like so. So when you get it into these more advanced positions, you are going to have to put it in sleep mode or turn the camera off and then turn it back on. You don't want to be manipulating it into that mode while the gimbal is on. You know, it's just not best practice. You want to make sure it's in sleep mode. So let me show you briefcase mode. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to turn this guy. Well, first put it in, make sure the camera's in, make sure the gimbal's in sleep mode. All right, it's in sleep mode. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen this knob, and then you're kind of going to break the camera apart here, the gimbal. You're not literally breaking it, you're just bending it into this position. So now it's obviously not going to support itself on the tripod, so you need to be very careful. So right about there is where you're going to want it, something about that. So your hand can fit under there comfortably. Once you get it where you want, you can just lock the knob. And then when you turn the camera on, take it out of sleep mode, it's in briefcase mode now. See that? So that's what briefcase mode looks like. And this is really easy to carry when you want to get it low to the ground. You can see from the side, you got two hands there. You can easily lower it and raise it up. And again, you could loosen this knob and fine tune the angle here. I just wanted to have enough room for my hand, but you could bring it up more, down more. You don't have to have it like right here. This is just where I have it for this demonstration. So it's pretty good where it is. You just want to make sure you tighten that up. What's a little bit awkward is when you are using it in the underslung mode or the briefcase mode, for example, you have to rotate this 180 degrees. So for example, this actually needs to be like this when you use it in the underslung mode. So you need to take the camera from here and put it to here. So this way when you're holding it upside down, the camera is correct, you see? So if I have it like this, by default and I just turn it upside down, you know, the camera's going to be upside down, so that's not going to work. You need to rotate the arm there so it's facing the correct direction. It is a little bit awkward at first because that move is a little weird, but it's really not that hard. I find if you just start in the correct position, if you just start here like this and you just rotate it, that's pretty much what you need to do. You need to rotate it. So if you do that first, sometimes it's a little bit easier to get it in the correct position. It's a little bit awkward at first because there's so many moving parts, but it's really not that hard. You just want to make sure that the gimbal is in sleep mode when you change the configuration like that. Otherwise it can start freaking out. If you turn it on and it's like grossly wrong, it'll be like, it'll make all these crazy glitchy moves there. So let me show you the 360 degree roll and also a vertical portrait mode now. All right, so if you want to use 360 degree vertical roll, so what you have to do is you have to hit the mode button 3 times. 1, 2, 3. See how the camera turned into vertical? So now if I'm holding it like this, and I double tap the trigger, it'll put it back into the default orientation. And now all I have to do is use the joystick and it'll rotate 360 like so. And if you double tap, it'll automatically go so you don't have to hold it. And that works really well. So you just make sure you have the camera exactly where you want before you initiate it. And you can, of course, change the speed as well. When in the 360 degree roll, I wasn't sure how to change the speed, but as it turns out, you just have to change the joystick speed. So if I double tap the trigger to get it back into the 0 position, I made the joystick speed, I have it set to fast now. So now when I double tap the joystick, it's going to go in fast 360 mode as opposed to slow. So I changed that by changing the joystick speed. Alright guys, so when in flashlight mode again, holding like this, if you just double tap the mode dial, it's going to go into portrait mode. So now we have this cool portrait mode, which is really convenient for that vertical crop for social media and things like that, Instagram. And you just double tap the mode dial when in flashlight mode. And again, if you triple tap the mode dial, that will put it into the 3D roll mode, which I showed you earlier. All right guys, so one other thing I wanted to show you is if you press the mode dial while you're holding the gimbal and just hold it with your thumb, that'll put the gimbal into sports mode. So it's going to be super responsive, as you can see here. So if you're tracking a moving subject and you need to turn fast, by holding the mode button down with your thumb while you're holding the gimbal, that will put it into sports mode. Now, if you double tap the trigger while you're holding the mode button, that will lock it into sports mode. So now it's stuck in sports mode and you don't need to hold anything with your finger. To get it out of sports mode now, you need to put your thumb on the mode dial, double tap the trigger, let go of the mode button, and sports mode is now disabled. And you will see that on the screen. The little figure will come up and it'll look like a guy running. That's when you know you're in sports mode. So those are the most popular modes that this unit has. And that's pretty much what you can do from the gimbal itself. Now you can do more advanced stuff via the app. And for example, you can do panoramas. You could have the thing, you know, go from one spot to another in a certain period of time, all those sorts of things. And that's all controlled via the app. So I think I'm gonna save that for another video because this video is so long already. And I'll go into more detail when it comes to using the app and stuff like that, because it's going to take some setup inside the house and a little bit of planning. All right, guys, so let me show you some of the footage I got using the awesome DJI Ronin RSC2 gimbal. quick walk with the kids. We'll see what happens. Alright guys, so at the end of the day, I'm really happy with the DJI Ronin RS-C2 gimbal. It works really well with my Sony a7C and the 20mm f1.8G lens that I currently have mounted. I also put the a6400 on it for a little bit. It's a little bit easier to use with the a6400 just because it weighs a little less, but they both perform pretty much flawlessly as far as the gimbal itself goes. It really does a good job, and the stabilized footage is incredible, as you saw in some of the sample footage I got. Be sure to stay tuned, and you will definitely get to see more sample footage. But as it is now, I did get some pretty good sample footage of the kids, and also playing inside the house when Jace was on that awesome Ninebot Segway. You can see the footage came out really good. You're able to get high, able to get low. You can custom control where you want with the joystick. And it's also super helpful to use that lock feature to keep certain axes locked depending on what mode you're in. I really like that lock feature. It makes it a lot easier, and it's so easy to get to it right there with your trigger. The grip feels really good in the hands on the gimbal as well. So it is kind of heavy, you know, with the camera on there. It does have some weight to it. So you will feel it in the shoulders and the forearms after using it for a while. But it's totally worth it because the stabilization is absolutely incredible, in my opinion. It works really, really well, and I'm super happy with it. So for the money, it seems like it's a really good value in my opinion. There are other gimbals out there, of course, but the feature set on this one is really pretty darn incredible if you ask me, especially if you incorporate some of the more advanced features that you can do via the app, which I'm going to show you in another video, because that's going to take me like at least another half hour to go through all those different features, show you how it works, show you the results, and so forth. So stay tuned for that video, and please let me know if you want to see that. If you have a heavier camera rig than the Sony a7C and the 20mm G Master lens, this gimbal supports up to 6.6 pounds. So if you're anywhere near that or above, I would recommend getting the RS2, which is the big brother of the RS-C2. And it can support more weight. It has carbon fiber arms that are slightly larger, so it can incorporate larger camera bodies. And that would be a better way to go if you're a hardcore professional using heavier camera rig solutions. All right, guys, I will catch up with you later. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell. Give me a thumbs up if you found this review useful. I really hope you got something out of this review. I tried my best to keep it beginner oriented, so please give me some feedback below, one way or the other. I want to make my reviews as good as possible, so I appreciate that feedback. And you guys have a nice day, and be sure to check out these other videos if you're in the mood. I'll catch up with you next time. Take care.